besties, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you're doing very well. Okay, so first of all, I just want to say that I'm very happy to be sitting down here talking to you today. I'm in a really good mood, and we are going to be picking up where we left off in my last video about this, and y'all had a lot to say, and y'all wanted me to do another one of these, and that's what we're going to do. This is an incredibly large conversation that I feel needs to happen, and we're definitely having it here on this channel in the comment section with the besties, which we're going to go in. But if you need like a little recap, let's do it. So, as we're aware, this summer Shane Dawson got cancelled. And then Shane Dawson went on a break, and then is cancelled for being on a break for being cancelled because he couldn't handle being cancelled and came back and started attacking everyone, then got cancelled for that, so is now on a break for the cancellation of the cancelled for going on a break for being cancelled. So that's where we're with, with Shane right now. And this we're aware, this stems from inappropriate behavior, disgusting behavior, problematic behavior, like everything Shane Dawson was being accused of, and there was evidence and there was video proof. And this also was a section that was talking about Shane Dawson's inappropriate jokes and behavior that was on camera, off camera, allegedly, with minors. And now Shane got absolutely brutally attacked and cancelled for this. Like, he's still not recovered from that. Like, what is it now? January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. 10 months later, Shane has not recovered and is still getting talked about the way he was back then. And now, again, whenever doing this video, in no way am I standing up for either James or Shane. All I'm saying is putting it into a bit of a, perspective on why the two ends aren't holding up and the accountability for both creators isn't there, and kind of opening the conversation on why we think that. So 10 months later, Shane is still being, held accountable, as he should be, for this behavior because he hasn't held himself accountable. The stuff with minors. James Charles, the exact same boat. Inappropriate behavior with minors, which we're seeing for the past couple of years, the past couple of months, and very strongly within the past couple of weeks. And it's a pattern of behavior that we're seeing. And with James, he kind of went silent for 3 days, and now he's back posting YouTube videos. Now he's back posting Instagram stories, posting Snapchats, posting tweets. And I'm like, with James Charles, alleged victims are coming forward or showing, messages that James Charles is sending them, all like this. Could you imagine if that happened with Shane Dawson? Like, could you imagine with Shane Dawson, people were like, this is my experience, here's pictures of what Shane sent me, here's the conversation. Sanders Kennedy kind of treaded that line where he started an investigation. He opened an investigation, if you're not aware. Sanders Kennedy is a drama channel where he contacted the LAPD, opening an investigation for if there were victims out there of Shane Dawson to come forward. Now, from our knowledge, no one came forward. Could you imagine the same way they're coming forward allegedly for James Charles they did for Shane? It would be like, I can't fathom the concept of what the internet would be like. And this is coming from someone who day in, day out is updating you on the updates with James, with Shane, with Jeffrey, with Tana, with Nikita. We're doing these updates, and I know for a fact, and I know that you know for a fact, that Shane Dawson would not be able to go away for 3 days and then come back and post YouTube videos and tweets and ignoring the problem at hand, the issue at hand, and just going on like normal. Even after James Charles has posted numerous tweets apologizing for his behavior, and by that, I don't mean apologizing like, oh, I shouldn't do this, I'm never going to do this again. Apologizing as in saying, I shouldn't have texted with that underage boy, and I shouldn't have accepted pictures from that underage boy. Pictures as in, you know what I mean, and I shouldn't have sent pictures. So here we have James Charles, coming forward on Twitter and coming forward in all these statements, saying that. Could you imagine if Shane Dawson did that? Not even being accused, but coming forward and being like, I shouldn't have done this, and I didn't know he was underage. There's a pattern of behavior with James Charles, the same way there's a pattern of behavior with Shane Dawson, in similar ways and in very different ways. However, people only want to talk about Shane. People only want to talk about, okay, we'll keep it going with Shane. We'll keep it with James. Where's the drama channels talking about it? want to name and shame, and that's not the purpose of this video. There is a drama channel out there, very liked and a very nice person. You covered a lot of Shane being called out for this stuff. You covered it in, day out. You were doing weekly updates. You were doing big, long videos. With James, absolutely silent. And actually, whenever I'm saying that, that applies to 7 drama channels I'm thinking about. And here's the thing. If we're not going to hold them all to the same standard, or at least start the conversation or question why people want to talk about one over the other, then what's the point? That's whenever, like, people accuse me of being, oh, you're too anti-Shane, or you're too... I'm trying to have the conversation of why are we so against Shane and so pro-James whenever they're both being accused of these horrific things. Are y'all just ignoring this? This is why I'm so glad that I have you and I have the besties who I'm going to start reading out the comments now on why you think people are talking about Shane still, and, you know, as they should be. But not James. And James is able to each time scandal about this, scandal about this, scandal about this, all with these inappropriate behaviors and, you know, sending messages or publicly flirting with, you know, underage. Who cares? He goes away for 2 days, he's back on the 3rd day. That's literally what happened. And it does not make sense. It does not make sense. And in my video, I read out a couple of your theories. Now, it was just some tweets. People were saying they believe it has to do with looks. They think that James is more... And it sounds horrible saying this, but a lot of people are saying they believe that because James is very visually appealing, that people are just willing to forget and pretty privileged. Do I believe that? I don't want to believe that. So I'm not going to let myself, like, my mind go there. A lot of people are saying that. Other people are saying that people grew up with Shane. A lot of other people are saying that with James, he's being accused of this behavior day in, day out, and so it's just kind of like repetitive and no one cares. And I'm like, are y'all hearing what you're saying? So if someone's being accused of something, we're not going to look at it like a pattern of behavior, but instead be like, oh, this is a story we've heard before. It was a story we've heard before with Shane Dawson, but we still wanted to talk then. Why not James? And now James did multiple tweets within the past couple of months being like, it's so liberating whenever people see what you've finally been saying. Like, his tweets, like, attacking Shane. And even on my channel, we were like, oh, get it. Now I'm like, you're just as bad, if not, you know what, you're on the same. I feel like all of y'all are. Why is it with these, like, men creators on this platform are all accused of similar things? Maybe that's why y'all all got on so well. Possibly. Possibly. And it's just, I'm looking around and I'm like, whenever there was Shane Dawson stuff, all of us jumped on it. Me included. Drama channels, commentary, journalists. With James Charles, I'm seeing very few. Or at least very few that are continuing talking about it. You know why? Because most of them are friends with James. Most of them love James. And here's the thing. Great. You can love a YouTuber and still talk about them. I put my hand up. I love Emma Chamberlain. Look at this. I have Emma Chamberlain's phone case. I have Chamberlain coffee, which is actually on the way. If Emma does something that pisses me off or is in drama, I call her out for it. You know why? Because if you're a drama channel, how are you expected to give, even if you're not going to give unbiased, because I don't even like when people say that about me, because I am biased, because I have opinions, and if I was unbiased, it means I have no personality and no opinions. Like, how are you expected to criticize someone or critique them or talk about them in a normal way if you love them or you're friends with them or whatever? And I feel like that's what's happening with the news coverage of James, at least. And now I've talked about the fact that my videos calling out James have been, you know, suppressed on YouTube or have been just flat out demonetized. Like, ads are off, and like, we've talked about this before. Maybe that's another reason. But morally, if you're gonna make all that money calling Shane out, surely you can sacrifice not making money calling out someone else for the exact same behavior to hold up the end of the argument. Sorry, I didn't mean for the rant to go on for that long because I know we talked about this in the last video, but basically what I wanted to do was, there was an overwhelming amount of comments on my video about this. It's called James Charles versus Shane Dawson. It will be linked below. And I just want to read so I'm on this video right now and I'm just going to, the first comments that are recommended, we're going to talk about them and have a conversation like we're on FaceTime and we're talking. And I do want you to continue the conversation, please, below on what you think on why people are so okay with just giving James a pass every single time, and with Shane, not so much. On similar, if not the same, behavior. Someone said, Kelsey said, I think Gen Z is still too young to understand how bad James's actions are, which is mainly his audience versus Shane's audience has grown up, and millennials or early Gen Z have been around and have grown and matured to know the gravity of the situation in full. So basically that the people that are aware of the Shane Dawson situation are able to call it out because they're mature and they understand it. I understand that, but in terms of journalist, commentary, whatever, we were all grown enough to cover the Shane stuff, so why not this? It's like when you're being like something's happening to you, you don't realize until you're older. You don't want to admit your idols are terrible, and we find out in the end. Azura said, your voice matters, Adam. They can't silence you if you keep speaking up. Always be here to support you. And this is the full thing as well. This is not about speaking up or whatever like that. I appreciate your comment. But it's just, I know that I called out Shane for this behavior. So if someone else, a big creator, is called out for this behavior, I'm also going to call them out for it. Because isn't that the logical thing to do? Yes or no, bestie? Go on. Interesting. So then Kez B said, here are all the reasons why this is happening in their opinion. 1. Talking about appearance. James Charles to the public looks more harmless than Shane Dawson. Because in the eyes of the public, they see that James is less masculine looking, therefore seems like less of a threat. I.e. less of what he's being accused of. Number 2, James is also younger than Shane. That doesn't make it right at all if he's still being accused of this. It just means that he's younger. It makes it seem like it's less of a deal when it's a big deal. To understand this, imagine if James was Shane or Jeffrey's age, so in his 30s as opposed to being in his mid-20s. Again, okay. Number 3, James is more likable by personality by Shane. I mean, they're both pretty unlikable. As in, Shane is generally gross both way in how he acts, talks, and does things, e.g. talking about not showering or picking his ass. This makes Shane look more creepier than James. This is why people downplay James's behavior, because everyone still remembers how bad Shane was in comparison. And it's like, can we not have the standalone conversation about James? Do we not have to relate it, you know? Like, if we're gonna call him out, let's have it two separate things. Whenever we were calling Shane out, we weren't like, oh, and then James did similar. No. You know what I mean? Number 4, Shane has had many scandals on top of what he was being called out for that James is being called out for. James has less than Shane, still doesn't mean he has none. Shane's cancellation was such a huge deal because he had so many scandals that were piled up over one another. Okay, true. And it went on for ages like that in one huge pile. James only has like one scandal spaced out between larger periods of time and is brought up less. Okay. Number 5, since James's last big cancellation before this Dramageddon or whatever the piss that was, people still seem to have an expectation that James might do an Uno reverse card and everyone will bounce back again and support him, so it makes him seem innocent. And finally, because of Shane's cancellation, we all remember how huge it was and how much people talked about it to the point where it was on the news at one point and celebrities coming in. That is very true. This has set our shock standards very high. Because people's standards for a scandal are so high right now, James's scandal seems like not that big to them, which is why it's being downplayed. Sorry if that was a lot. Thank you so much for your comment. Some interesting points, definitely. Ella said, yes, Shane being older shouldn't make a single difference. These people are not being held accountable enough, and that's exactly why they continue to get away with it and continue the nasty, toxic behavior. Jade said, James is a spoiled brat and the power and privilege he has is truly terrifying. I hope more people get on board with this movement. And it's like, we don't even need to call it a movement, just like, everyone's equal. Okay. Carson said, ignoring James's actions is just contributing to the silence of SA victims everywhere. If people think they'll be ignored or scrutinized, if people think that they're going to be, you know, silenced, scrutinized, why would they come forward? Because it's happening in James's case. That's a good point, and it's really fucking sad. Flora said, James thinks that he's invincible. This is why we shouldn't put influencers so high. They think that their money and power makes them untouchable. All this while his victim is being attacked and re-victimized. Sad. Alyssa said, it's no wonder that James never denounced publicly the Lopez brothers, since he's just as bad as them, allegedly, and doesn't see anything wrong with what they did, allegedly. Hannah said, I think the double standard come from James being accused of this in the past. The only reason James is protected now is because he has the barrier built around him, thinking that he can do no wrong after Dramageddon and that the internet will always be on his side. However, I do believe that both Shane and James should be held to the same degree of consequences. Someone also said, I remember in one of my last videos on maybe Twitter, whenever I shared the link, they were like, Shane went away. You know, Shane, he took a time out. So it allowed people to still talk about him and come after him and feel like they were, you know, making a bigger impact rather than James just posting videos again and silencing and drowning out the people standing up. And again, a marketing tactic, nonetheless, very disgusting in my opinion. Bittersweet said, so quoting, Shane looks like Shane and James looks like James. James does makeup, looks more friendly, etc. So when victims, allegedly, come out, everyone's first thought are, but he wouldn't do something like that. But when you look at Shane, you can easily pin something onto him. He looks homeless. Okay. This probably isn't the reason, but it's an idea. And it's really upsetting how many people are coming to the conclusion that it has something to do with looks. But again, that's like what we're seeing here. Emily said Shane fans were a lot older, so they took issues with the things he did. So they were more mature, tuned in. Well, doesn't that prove even further if James is being called out for this behavior with minors and he has minor fans? Right? Allegedly. Okay. So because James has such young fans, they probably don't see anything wrong with his actions, which is why he's going to have no problem messaging another couple of them in a couple days. Allegedly. Jasmine said, people don't want to attack James because of what happened with Taddy, and they know that he won't change his behavior. And it's like, I agree, and you agree, what happened with Taddy was absolutely awful, but if he's doing stuff in real time, allegedly, let's talk about that. Let's focus on now, 2021, as opposed to 2019. Okay. Evila said, when Taddy came out with her Bye Sister video, people were really upset with James, but after the narrative flipped and James was vindicated, people changed their tune and supported him. Now that similar accusations are being made, people would have to flip back again after his redemption, and I think mentally that's a lot of work for just casual fans. So not even just stans, but, you know, casual fans. However, his fans are going to support no matter what. With Shane, the story just keeps getting worse, so mentally it's a lot easier to keep the negative perception going. I think that's interesting about just the casual fan, you know, just being able to be like, oh, it's okay with James. Doesn't make it anyway right, though. Talia said, it's because James's alleged victim is male. If they were a female, it would be talked about. So Paloma's saying that Shane's fan base are older, so it felt, you know, responsible for him to take accountability. The TikTok kids that follow James don't care to hold him accountable. And that's a conversation on what his demographic is right now. Right? Like, he's being accused of this stuff, and that's his demographic right now. Can we talk about that? Gigi said, I think a huge factor for James's sympathy is what we saw when he said that he wanted to hurt himself, and it was proven to be false. Now it's clear that it was true, he should be held accountable. Again, allegedly, we're not saying anything's true. We don't know, but if we're basing this all on 2019, he's never going to move forward. That's still, is this the logic we kept whenever he was, you know, getting called out for parties and people didn't want to talk about that? Oh, poor James, you know what I mean? It's a bit weird. Walter said, it took Shane Dawson years for him to be cancelled. Shane was called out from day one. People have always spoken out against him. And it wasn't until now that people's light bulb began to question his morals. It might be the same in this case with James Charles. It might take another generation grip and he gets cancelled. Gen Z ain't that woke at him. That's interesting. The Mighty said, in my opinion, it's a lot easier to hate Shane. People are scared to go after James because of the whole Taddy situation. James is never going to be held accountable. Lynn said this. His stands are 12 years old, Adam. The older ones don't see a problem and are just coming to his defense. I really hope they don't have, you know, anything happen to them. Okay, we'll read out one more. So, Strawberry Milk said, I believe that the reason Shane was cancelled and talked about more of his behaviour rather than James is because the behaviour was more unexpected from him. Shane was known as the father figure of YouTube and helps everyone, while James was in drama for most of his career. And then the Bye Sister video came out, which engraved to us, you know, that James had done these alleged things. And even though James proved his innocence, the manipulation was still in our heads on the matter for James. So when all these alleged assumptions came rolling in, everyone was numb to the fact that they were real. With Shane, it was more of a shock. Some really good points by all of you there. The besties are smart. I have to... And can I just say as well, when I film these videos, I genuinely do look at this like I'm talking to someone and like we're on like a Zoom or FaceTime call. I mean, I don't know if you feel like that. And I really appreciate whenever it's like not like I'm talking into a void and, you know, you leave comments, and like I was reading out comments that were like paragraphs there, and I'm gonna do it on this video as well. I really do appreciate it. And if you want, maybe we can do a part 3 talking with even more opinions if you have you know, like developing on it. I'm really grateful for this community of like, I'm seeing no one really talk about this, and I just want to talk about it, and so I'm talking and y'all want to talk back as well, and it's like healthy, you know what I mean? Okay, I love you, bestie. Thank you for watching. Please, in the comments below, tell me what you think. I'll see you down there. Bye.